So what we're starting today with is the 6th chapter. As mentioned last night, the 6th chapter of the Bodhisattva Character, and the topic is patience. So what we understand, by patience, it's not merely, being, calm, patient when someone is angry towards us. It's patience is all to do with, facing any type of difficulties, any kind of difficulties, and then, remaining calm and patient in these situations. Of course, the whole book, the whole Bodhisattva Character, engaging in Bodhisattva's way of life, the whole text is very precious and very holy and very important. And that's how I feel too. But as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, in particular, also with regard to living in a community, in particular, the 6th chapter on patience is so very important. So now for the next 10 days we'll be or 10 days in total we'll be busy studying this text, and so therefore for this reason from my side, from the teacher side, also from the student side, we should do our best to make effort to make good use of this time, because you all come from far away, you've had great expenses, and you've prepared a lot to come here, so you should really make good use of that time. So Thosamling, obviously, is a very peaceful, quiet environment, and even His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself, he came here, and so you can say it's a quite holy, precious place. So and also all the people involved here, the workers, the staff, they're working hard to make everything run smoothly. And so although 10 days is not so very long, but there will probably be a change, in the way we think, change in our minds, compared to, from the time that we get here, and then after those 10 days, once we leave again. So there will probably, be some change in our minds. So, yeah, we're looking at the root verses basically of the 6th chapter now, the patience chapter. You all have a photocopy, right? And we have different commentaries on that text, on the Bodhisattva Charya or engaging in the Bodhisattvas they apply. But the root verses themselves, were written by Master Shantideva. And so the Tibetan title is Junjuk in brief. And so this is literally engaging in the behavior. So that's the literal meaning. Well, there's a little bit in the original Tibetan that Geshema is also using, which you don't find on your copy. But it's just basically saying that, now what comes after is an explanation of altogether, basically, on the last 4 perfections, which are patience, effort, general concentration, and wisdom. But of course, here we are merely looking at the patience chapter.
아니 동무 많이 비 아니 가서 뒤에 3년을 주스라 아니 하동 시럽이 저거라 제가 주변에 준비를 아니 가서 3년을 시럽을 온듯이 저거랬어. 이제는 사지간에 보면 제가 조시했다.
Yeah, so what we are talking obviously only about is the part of patience. The last 4 out of these 6 perfections are the perfection of not only patience but then enthusiastic effort, concentration and wisdom, or especially insight in Vipassana.
아니 저거 주비 있을까? 딱 한달 가르치고 나가서 저거 공부이나 아니 저거 간데스 공부도 아니 공부 더만 간데도 아니 공부 해도 가래. 저기 시고라 이거만 가르치고.
Yeah, so now we come to the part which you also find in the copies on the top page, which gives the outline. It says here, the way to meditate on patience has 2 sections. And then first an explanation of the contents of this chapter, and then second an explanation of the name of this chapter. And then the first part is again subdivided into these 2 points: striving to meditate on patience, abandoning the obstacles for the accomplishment, and abiding in this antidote, and taking to mind the method for practicing patience. So this is basically, to say in brief, in other words, how we should meditate or familiarize ourselves with patience, and then the benefits that come about.
이 거래야 저기 공주의 의미는 주변에라가 공주의 의미는 아주 컨트롤하면은 아니 이미 가르쳐 주는 가르쳐서 부족하고 있는 아주 지당이 나는 공부를 그러면 스스로 공제 전지가 또 그거를 샤마지 시를 강화로 주는 공제 내가 그거를 해보고 이 부자들 그거는 쇼만으로 우리가 지키는 치료를 앉아 차려요. 단단히 어떻게 지키 저바로는 저베기 편에 가르쳐. 저바라 마공바 있는 이미 가르쳐. 또 상담에 사람이 간데스 토에는 쇼를 이제 두려는 가리는 내랑 가리는 모습을 당이 가리는 거에는 들어 동네 책을 들었어.
So when we meditate and think, contemplate about the various drawbacks or faults of anger, and then also about the respective benefits that come about due to familiarizing oneself with patients, that will have a temporary effect, on, say, when we sit on our cushion. But not only that, also when we then go outside, go about and face difficulties, the more we familiarize and meditate on drawbacks, on force of anger and benefits of patience, that will also have then a positive effect when we go outside, into the world and face difficulties and hardships. Yeah, so when we contemplate more and more about anger and what all these negative aspects or drawbacks that come about with it, then naturally we'll understand the benefits. We'll naturally understand the benefits and the good outcomes of being patient.
And the most of the ones are sort of in a taring, Kamabuji in a taring, Tombat in a social Magayata. Those are not easy to between me. The mother in India was Yazonda, and this was cheap. The Dolaceva, the material, depending on where. So some other get home material.
And then they are both, visible outcomes or visible drawbacks of, anger, and those drawbacks of anger that we can't see. So, for example, if we go about, being angry and, engaging in negative actions because of our anger and so forth, then, it will naturally have a negative outcome in the form of suffering, but not just in this life, but also in future lives. It will be in the form of being reborn in a lower state as an animal or helping or whatnot. So these are all the outcomes we can't see. But what is very obvious to us, what we can see, is that when we are angry, act negatively, use harsh language and so forth, then naturally we'll be feeling more distant. We'll be getting conflicts with our friends and parents. Others will dislike us and so forth. So these are just to name a few examples of these negative outcomes of being angry that we can see.
So they did the control and you get a donor. I saw the opportunity the video we shoot the control gets a jump here. The Chinese single down the order and such in the Korean and it other Sajina control gets a jump and then throw out the big change of throw a gender the big in the ship of the water. Change is a broken and the child of the Nima sound.
So, and it was also said that anger destroys, all our roots of virtue. Also geht's ja schon, ne? Yeah, so it's following the outline. So it said under the heading of unobservable force, it says that anger destroys our roots of virtue. And then there's a second point here, it's making effort to practice patience while knowing all the various forms and drawbacks of anger and benefits of patience.
때는 저어디 친구들 얘기가 친구들 저어다가 정신의 친구를 그래이네 되게 친구를 하고 그래서 이내 디나 만다와 그래요가 아니 말하는 다 친구들 친구들이 장비들이 얘기를 좀 대시 그거는 얘기를 하고 이런 얘기 강도도 지금 메시지 있습니다. 저어들은 그렇게 하고
you will, once you have a look at these outlines, you will, have no difficulties in understanding everything, or very educated, you will know. But, I will now, do my best, to, share with you what I've studied myself, by, joining the Nunnery, studying philosophy, and I heard different commentaries on that text, so I do, my best in sharing, what I learned.
루비 군들이요.
예,
갑자기 뭐로? 사치해야 되는데 싸워지는 거가.
The root text, following the root text.
다다디다 그 싸워지를 하는 빌라가 개발통도 싸워이 제한다 대시 출로서 예시 강의 대표자 콘주치기 정보를 지했어가. 다디 개발통도 싸게 저기 콘주치기 나와이나 아니 나랑 좀 행동만 내가 계속 막 물어보니까 겨울동안 뭐 사셔야지 계절이 아니 가서 콘트롤 좀 있어야 아니 얘기 계절만 좀 그래서니까 겨울동안 싸봐이 제가 되게 되게 계절에만 보여요. 그 지금 제가다니다 아니 주로서는 되게 계속 보죠 봐. 이내 되게 계절은 좀 그래요. 제가 되게 아니 제가 주로서 준주 상대 그쪽에 아니 계절은 좀 그래요. 이내 지금 정말로 가는 아주 돈이 아니 싫어도가 돈이 되게 계절이 좀 두고 내려가 다다 제가 되게 싫어서 이거는 안에 계속하지 좀 제가도 주문도 주바로 소리 되게 좀 계속 사셔야지 아니 좀 공부 좀 나와 있나 이 공부 남사대야 아니 장출 선발로 직접 정보를 상제의 장출 선발을 내려야 공부 나와 있나 아니 맞지 그것도 준비를 하고 하면 다가 좀 주문 파지 그런데서 나는 아니 겨울밤 사이에서 정말 가서 됐으면 미터를 누가를 가져와.
그래, 좀
만들기 어디든 좀 해. 근데 지난게 순간 말아요. 아까 진주가 겨울밤 사이에 이제 손을 엄마 주가 나오고 겨울 자사도 좀
So, looking at the first verse, it reads, "Whatever wholesome deeds, such as making offerings to the Buddhas, generosity and so forth, that have been accumulated over 1,000 eons, are all destroyed by one moment of anger." So, this is, referring to all these virtuous actions that we, have accumulated all the time. Be it the roots of virtue of having been, generous, having, led an ethical lifestyle, having been patient, having made effort and, trained in concentration. All these, roots of these virtuous actions, they are destroyed when, strong anger arises in our minds. However, it is the case that the roots of virtue of having developed wisdom, apparently the last of the six perfections, that cannot be destroyed by anger. And then also it says in one of these commentaries, we hear the explanation that when we are angering towards the Bodhisattva, in a high, being, on a higher level, then also very much our roots of virtues get destroyed due to strong anger. However, it is said that this is not the case when we get angry towards an ordinary being. Yeah, so, for example, I feel, when I heard these commentaries, that all sorts of roots of virtue can get destroyed by one moment of anger, roots of virtue that have accumulated over thousands of years, so that made me feel quite discouraged or disheartened. So yeah, but therefore actually it's always said that making dedication prayers is also very important. Once we have done something positive, accumulated some virtues, it's good to make dedication prayers. So it's like putting bank on the money, money in the bank. So to make it stable, once we dedicate the virtue, then they cannot be destroyed anymore by anger. Do you understand? Can you follow? Yeah, so it's no benefit. I mean, it's no use really if you can't really follow. So we want to make sure. But as you know, later on in the day, in the afternoon, there is some time for questions and answers. Then you can, feel free to ask whatever, and then I do my best to respond. If you're, it might be difficult for some to sit for a little longer on the ground, so feel free to take more cushions if you. Yeah, so then we look at the second verse that reads, "There is no negativity like anger, and no fortitude like patience. Therefore, I should earnestly strive in various ways to meditate on patience." So this is saying that there are of course many like negativities or negative afflictions, desire, attachment, and so forth. But among all these, anger is really the worst of them all. And likewise, as there are many positive actions. We can practice generosity, ethics, concentration, and so forth. But the patience is considered the greatest, or the best. It says it's greatest fortitude. And which, of course, is quite difficult to practice. When someone utters a harsh word towards us, a harsh language, someone looks down onto us, or we face any difficulties, it's quite difficult to be patient in these circumstances.
소들 파이미 이슈 제목만 시기에는 그다가 내 맞아도 소들 때에 가고 싶은 거 되와요. 또 내용만 써요만. 근데 이다 타초가 소들 좀 건강 간다 수준 탑시 따야 돼서. 야채로 막아야 이제.
So we are again and again encouraged to make effort in developing our patience, and I mean we can we'll have experience from staying in a community, for example, or when we go outside and we meet people who are unfriendly, are harsh towards us. But if one were then just to be harsh in return, react angrily and express that anger by retaliating. And then it's like putting more firewood into the fire. It only increases the problem, and then it comes to all these arguments, and I mean on a small scale, but also we have these conflicts between countries. Even it really can increase more and more. So if we happen to be or find ourselves in a situation where we have problem or face difficulties, it's better than to be quiet, then the other person would have no reason really to say anything back again, or it wouldn't increase the whole problem. Or we can also go away to not make the problem only increase more and more.
지단계에 저기 주소는 러디도 일단 하고 가. 일단 민이제 말았으니까 줄 미신까지 동지치어야 찌기 남성 카디자와 찌기 뜻 맞아 그래요. 대시리도 대니버로 집어가는 카디자니도 정말 많아라고. 가서 일단 배터니 이제 미신까지 카디자고 있나. 대변인 얘기가 뭐 파직도 그래요. 관련로 그 나름으로 많은 거. 결혼을 해야 되는 그래도 말아야 처음 대니버로 저기 집어지 통도 보라. 수수도 가로 있면서 this is what 남자 카디자 로들가 돈에체로 직나고래로 원천이만 데데데데데데 뭐버시오는 아니 디 콘버치도에 아니 디 파게 카디자는 수지를 지우베요 뭐스라 가스나 소소다 오르제나 아니 제지마 수산지 바데게 미디마가에 차이데 주소 다가이나 두도에도 근데 이미에
We can also think of an example, say the two of us, and we meet someone who's uttering harsh speech towards us, and then say I react with anger and I retaliate, I say bad words in return, but the other person then remains quiet, so we can see the difference. The person saying that language or harsh language in return will have more difficulties, and also reacting like this, retaliating. You automatically feel more unhappy. You can see the difference.
세상은 Thosamling 때 공사적인 그리는 좀 미분지 유지를 쓰고라 미미가 집어지는 그래서 비주에 중심으로 대해서 이 나로가 맞는 지시하는 것을 이 나로가 같이 비교하고 말해 이 나로가 맞는 투여들이 미뉴뉴를 Thosamling 미 엔드미만 보여 있네. 수수 위치가 투여에 미 공부를 했어. 이 공부인에 대해 가지고 비주를 가지고 게 이용하고 말아. 근데 아니 나도 공부 나서다지 여자시는 공부 가르 나오면 수도체를 이들은 저기 리차리다. 이게 공부 나서서 수체를 자고 이런 가지 치료지라는 수도체를 내다고 봐. 좋아. 근데 이자리가 아니 디상단에 되게 좀 나중에 인데만 보여도 나를 되게 미디만 되는 이 나로랑 얘기 나라가 두에도 막아와치는 되게 믿어서는 좋아. 근데 지나야 수수기 이 공부만 됐으면 짜야 하는 거.
His Holiness often talks about that there are around 7 billion people now on this earth, but we are all sane, and he also says that we can think that say about half of our lifetime is already used up, and the time we spend together is very rare. It's not very long, and we can contemplate that for the short duration of our lives, or for the short period of time that we spend time with others, it's not appropriate to be angry, or and so forth.
그래서 이 미치가 기부시는 미치에 백해좀 그랬어. 소소라 기부 미라에 기부 개와 심하네 기부 그라 안디 미치든도들야 두바죠 마데 칸 담르친 소소 미치나 기부 아니 미신가래 그를 보라서 마마제 개와 심하이나 소소라 기부 개자치케는 미쳐와 그래서 소소 강도도 기부도 생발을 지는데 백해좀
So for the rest of the time that we still have left, whether we go to places and whatnot, by living our lives, it's very important to do our best to remain in a rather happy state of mind, right? Because that will be of benefit in this life and also in the future lifetimes. Whereas if we were to rather argue with others, and get angry. Then it would only make us feel miserable, and that would have a negative effect also on future lifetimes. And as we said before, anger will destroy so much virtue. So therefore, having a relaxed, happy state of mind is so important.
류다서 생이가 시대의 류류미가 내가 수들에서 사진한테도 제가 자와되나에 가두라는 시당 수무는 아주 수나 시당하고 지나와야 수제죠. 수제는 아주 수들은 아주 저거 공부인데 아마도 내가 너는 아까도 안디서 나가도 그래 수준에서 수로 받아라 애가 가리는 기계로 제가 되게 시당하는 수무 시당이 지금 나차도 좀 샤니 이대로 시간을 만들어가지고 내가 이 수세를 올렸어. 하고는 수도 나올 때, 어디로 차와야 하니 나중에 수세들에서는 꽤 공연까지 하고, 수세다가 막 가리고 집에 숨겨놓는 데다가 까마치는 주저고 공연합니다. 이 마시기 나중에 시간이 아니 어디 숨는 시간이 수수를 가지고 제왕이나 이 가지 집에서 나중에 이해가 많이 들어. 이야 아니 료료지 이렇게 일이 시원 영문에 료료지 내가 말이야. 그러면 제가 있으면 쫓아요. 불강사가 제가들은 료료지들 하시고 있으면 어디 가서 일을 쭉 그래서라. 되네 아니 sembarlah 료료지 되고 말에 아니 가와요 말에 저거 그 드라마에 말에 아니 대화지에 그 말이야. 대화 미터라 아니 타나 아주 이 공부를 치고 싶지 않은 문제들 공부를 나와요나 원한이 군에 이해하지 싶으면서 이 무엇이 때문에 아니 수수도 생각이 공부를 나는 생각이 뭐를 잘 말아 와 미카지는 공부라는 그런 다시 그러니까 아니 미디어하고 지어야 돼 공부나 사리가 거 너무 오체에 미디어 뭐 오체로 저거를 다시 돼 아니 지금 한번 돼야로 우리가 너무 좀 해야 되고 와 이 가르는 시간이 수준을 가지고 창난 들어가는 나고 창을 그대로 그랬다는 시간이 수준을 가지고 지어오는 와.
So then we look at the third verse, which reads, when one holds the painful mind of anger, one's mind will not experience peace. One will not get happiness and joy, and sleep will be elusive, and will be unstable, or will become unstable. So this is pretty obvious what this is saying. So if someone has generated the mind of anger, then one will automatically not feel peaceful and relaxed. It's like suffering from like a sickness or some pain where one has to go to the doctor and needs to rely on medicine and needs help from friends and so forth. And likewise, here the mind of anger is it's a painful mind. That because of which one has no patience and the mind is rather agitated. One doesn't feel joy, one isn't relaxed, one doesn't feel happy, and at the same time also one will have difficulties sleeping. And then it has these physical results as well. Someone who really has strong anger, their faces turn red, their eyes turn red, they start to tremble. So there's no peace or happiness at all.
Yeah. 제가 그때는 그 상황이 상황이 되는 상황이 이미 상황이라. 아래 되게 재밌는 제가 도구동이 그래가 소소요지 저거는 그러니까 내가 이런 자냐만 저번에 나서서요. 그러니까 좀 처음에 나서서요. 그래서 Dei anni sono lunga mi delle lunga dai lunga si che lunga tutto come mi sai adesso sono ma una volta da stata sono una per vedere dei anni tu sono calane mimi insomma tengo tutto tanto di stato io già ma non per vedere mai in passato
e chi oggi So these are all drawbacks now we're looking at that obviously we can see, we can relate to. We can understand very clearly that someone has anger, they will lose their friends, they get into arguments. And if someone really repeatedly has strong anger, they will get physically sick. So these are all the various drawbacks of anger we can see or relate to. And then, but there, with respect to the drawbacks of anger, with regard to future lives, there are even more.
The other kind of the healer sopa, Jomber Chiba, the Jeburo is a bishop, and missing Ra, Kanda, Northern Kudi, Jeburo, in that may say, the Hanamishu, some Mishu, Shambi, Northern, and so like Kudichi. Shooting Napura, DJ, and it changed the attention, but Namukola Dengue, the color that we chose with Jabuda, number the Homer, the Temaina, Ra, the Rajan, the Nunnery, Jabuda, Miss Shuku Karina, College, Shadana, Temaina, Calico, changing and Calico, the Magaya challenge, Jeben, the Super Bowl, that Janazia, Mikashi, one church, you know that the video in so much in something, military and educating. I give me to me. He said, very good. Kanakos Kadija, yes, Zahi, David, Zahi George, he is so much in Taco, Suzuki, Buddha, Suzuki, Kuchi, Kusaki, meeting him by Inaya. The Kadu in the Buddha, so much in the body of Utu, house. Utu me, George is. Jembe do jump, Namuja, Jabaro, Numero, the legend channel so that you want to do it, and Sitamina, and the middle of Suzanne, Calico Time in Reda, so that Katija, the child dress.
So now we're looking at the next 1.5 verses, verse 4 and verse 5, the first 2 lines, which reads, a master who has anger is in danger of being killed, even by those who depend upon his kindness for their wealth and happiness. By it, friends and relatives are disheartened. They will not stay close despite my generosity. So this is pretty obvious. Talking about the same master, a rich person who or benefactor, whom others depend on. Other poor people, say for example, depend on for their food and basic necessities and so forth. But if that person, this benefactor, is a very naturally unkind person or evil person. Looking down onto them and treating them badly and so forth. And then even those poor people who actually depend on that benefactor, they will just get disheartened or despair, and they will distance themselves from them, and or even might try to get rid of that evil benefactor in the form of killing them.
Tinalo, Muni, Diria, Sonado, Digde, Tamachin to Tabo, Timuni, Dember, Sunsha, Tinato, the chicken, Joata, the Suzuki, Control, and all the Sonado,
What do you think? Now we have looked at a few verses until now. What do you think? Do you get that idea? So, really, this is something that there's some truth to it? Is there really some drawbacks, or are there really some drawbacks to anger and benefits of patience? What do you think when you look at these verses and hear the explanation?
Just the Jordan, this only the Mishra, this one, and take the trolley, trolley, and also Kazita in a window, Kazuo in a little, so sunlight, then I had to do the name, you know, so green on a country. Nasiya Luna, only Zamana Roy to the student, Nana Sunjasai, Samadoli, Ali, Shula to go, this Chianga, he did the Sundas and so the middle. The name counted that the 7 years step, 11, Masi, and says, where the kitchen dress.
One might to really have a closer look at that text, if there is some feeling of, oh, this is really as it is. So for example, for me for example, I do read this text again and again in Tibetan and also in Hindi, and sometimes I think, oh, really, this is the way I think. There's definitely a lot of benefit to looking at that text and reading it repeatedly.
이제 지난해도 저는 사실 거기에 수술을 할 때는 이미 예주시서 이를 조고에는 디스베드로 해도 미니엄들을 싫어. 그래서 통주로 예주시에
To look down.
그래서 시설에는 이 수술 가서 찍게 진중이 되게 레우도 수술을 해로 이제도 그러나 아주 단단히 오다刚你们按相对东西，不过别的说了别讲了，那你看这里的，你家里头是公妈家外呢，还是说几百个几个说个啥外呢？里边看有那个是吧？现在俺常在去拿来肉，也是送的，像是肉的是吧？你说当时了解出了，你就必须到了解过了，是吧？你必须这样我把这，对说我的难解哦，看水，说的都是当说我。熊别人说罗巴钱，熊别人地位少，说地方那里他不会去，是吧？那个路那个，你说那边便宜了啊，你不能按这样嘛，你地方别吃不能，熊罗巴钱，说把这个说罗大，那个那边地个，但那经常去看到老啥的，你要就是说都这个的，就可以现在经常做了弄嘛，或者不是这什么，你这个是你这种路这来去吃不的，按你这个你路人家上班。
Yeah, so this can actually, this text basically, or the advice given here, they can actually be, compared or taken as medicine, as it were, that we can use when we go outside and meet with people, and might look down on us and so forth. Or to give an example from the time that I spent in the nunnery. So, for example, sometimes we had to go out and use, or go about some work for the nunnery, for the sake of the nunnery, and then we had to spend money for buying things, and obviously we needed to be very careful and aware that to separate our own money and the money of the nunnery, and if we were to use the nunnery's money for our own sake, that of course is very great negativity. So this, we learned over time. So and likewise, we can take the text or the advice given here from the text we can take it to heart and then use it when we go out, outside and find ourselves in various situations.
이미 뒤되는 거래. 또 나의 가만히 이미 통행이 이미 지셔오라. 너도에는 너도 좋아하는 데 바르는 너 가르모 가리네. 너도 공부도 요가 있나? 세디 이미나 저심하게 이미네 가다와 네 반데 네네 가와 요마이 소소게 데네 컨트롤하면 다 집어로 오시라. 네 소소네 아니 가와 요마 레스트라. 트로이 드레이 트로아데이는 맞아 트로아디 자르 베션. 와 트로아디 자르 베션은 드레이 텔라소가 되다. 아니 디 이미가소. 텔라를 되다 도 썼습니다. 트로아데이 텔라소. 대대 가르서는 이미레션. 근데 콘도디 자르선 디 이미 디게와 아니 둥게 바니 제벌제 이거. 근데 콘도디 가서 라주를 지어 있나? 디기 아니 이미 가려면 수수수다 둥게 나오는 지고 레스라.
So now we go on further in the text, which is a little summary of the faults of anger. And it reads, in short, there is nobody who lives happily with anger. The enemy of anger creates suffering in the here and so forth, or in the next. So this is referring to the fact that by having strong anger, it will not only create various kinds of suffering for us in this life, but also in future lifetimes to come. And here anger is compared to an enemy, because of which we also don't have any sense of joy. But yeah, it only creates problems and sufferings for us, not in this life, but also in future lifetimes.
이미 공동 이미 갈까리 차네 다 되게 아니 저거 보면 해 가리는 봐. 여기 저거 보면 이미 가리. 다 저거 보면 해도 가리는 봐. 다만 좀 전부 사람들 이 나도 여기 인디시도 아니 통주 인디치도 동부도 가리는 치도 저 자라고 가리다는 거를 저거 보면 가리치 삼던던 상황이 됐습니다. 그 보면 스스로 해도 가리. 봐. 내거는 나도 가졌다는 주문하는 게 또 되네. 왜냐면 미지 쉬워야 남자 파쉬면 아니 제체를 내가 친구 채워. 그래서 저거 보면 테스트를 딱 우리 있다가 그때를 가리지 않는 것을 라나 기분다. 라 스스로 계산하고 계시처럼 가는 수식을 정하려고 해서 나는 스스로 소가 되어 있는 거 같은 리더. 그 정말 저거 봉투는 네 배로 스스로 당연히 되고.
So now we look at the various drawbacks of anger, and now we look at the benefits of patience. What it means, or what the benefits are, when we remain calm and patient in situations where we are sometimes maybe beaten up by someone, or someone asks hard language or not. So the benefits of remaining calm in these situations by not retaliating and so forth. We can think of situations where people have are finding themselves in situations where one is abusing the other, and then the other does not practice patience but reacts out his anger or her anger, and then they might end up in prison, or their life may even become or be in danger. So now there are these various benefits that come about now due to practicing patience.
handle career is that the benefit into career the law in a Kanshi tinted the Kanshi day the canal was about for that south the later Kanshi tinted also to say the girl sympathetic the Shadira the Uzuja Kalejan so but dinner job but the then you can get your journey but in Yeshua as well. Nothing but dream day and try jump on the Susu Kundodi Susu Kundodi Susu Machan. 다 개만 되더니 용거를 좀 맞지 않아. 이제 시즌에나 콘도 정보랑고의 카레를 아니 콘도 때문에 해도 카레를 소소히 콘도 때문에 짠 가지다 막 매워서가 눈땅 돼서이나 되게 해도 카레라나 되니 되다 치마라 되는 데다 센트 되더라. 되다는 제와디 봐 말하는 통주를 제일 마시면 막 제와디 캐는 거 봐. 다 제와지나 캐레니네 제와 심하게 캐는. 그래서 지기 나도 저거 공부하다 때문에 수술 컨트롤만 좀 맞좀 그래 아니 가대자 디바 방법 맞서서 때문에 이 가를 세들의 기대 파베 와 겨울 주말에는 수술 기대서 보거나 아니지 이제 수술 밀고니 수술 리된 가는 되게 되라야 되지 아니지 하다 미 보면 되는 되거나 되게 나도 더더 얘기해서 싸워 레스라 대야해요.
So then the next verse, the first two, the next lines read, "But whoever assiduously overcomes it finds happiness now and hereafter." So this is saying or referring to, if one makes effort, if one really concentrates on, being patient, practicing patience, and trying one's best to overcome anger, then it brings various benefits with it. Such as finding happiness and joy in this life, but also in the next life, due to one's practice of patience, one will have a good rebirth. We might have again another precious human life, or one might be reborn in one of the other higher states of rebirth as a god or a human. So so this is what this verse refers
to. 탑이래지 탑식하는 쪽이라 저거 보면은 탑식하는 메터드 같은 분들이시라 저거를 탑이래지 받는 이유에서 공주 위주가 나서 공주 카드 가와지는 공주 위주 봐 주도 제나이가 주가 버쳐와 강스 아니 저배기 표현이다 저배기 표현 보면 아서 어느데 표현되는 데들은요 상관이 봐 공부하는 것도 지난게 공부도 그래서 너무 책 내 마음을 집어넣는 것은 하다 일을 공부하지 봐 근데 이제 컨트롤이 아주 주바가야 같이 다녔다 아무도 지마줘야지 계속 컨트롤 지수는 아니면 저거 가서 보면 저거 보면 핸들 카드 보고 무사지 되겠어.
So then the next two outlines here, it says there are eliminating the causes of anger and then meditating on the benefits of patience. So this is very straightforward. And meditating, the Tibetan word is gom and can be translated in different ways. One possible translation is meditating, but it also means to familiarize oneself or habituate oneself. So that's what this is saying.
다들 콘주기 주가와라 호시도와 콘주 주 가데가스 가오래나와 콘주기 아니가 주 모래 이미다 저 주변에 콘주기 주거라 상고 담보가 이미 줘와 라 딜라 아니 마로와 수 주메겨와 릭상탄 제제 콘주 제산데 도비타 콘주 제산 아디까지 메바소 도비타라 아니 메바데 한 메바서야 장마서야 콘주 나와이나 아니 메바 가데소 이제 아니 대 도비 이제 탑라 콘주 도비 아니야 너무 비즈니스적으로 원들 탑시적으로 왔으라 탑시 가는 겁니다. 콘주가 빠야 기업 제라 탑시 가는 겁니다. 아니 콘주 제위 주다 콘주 제 가르쳐야 돼 다시 타고 라 하고서 다시 타고 배 시타오신다 콘주 제라 제리스 주 시도 다니 대본 시도 다시 콘주 나서 이제 가르쳐 성공을 따지신 이 아니 나서 방해 이 시시.
So then we have the next outline, just looking at the headings. The first for that section is this, it deals about deals with the method for practicing patience. Then has these 4 points: the nature of the cause of anger and its shortcomings, and then the advice to strive for the method to eliminate anger. And the third one is the actual method to eliminate anger. And then lastly, striving to bend the causes giving rise to anger through such an analysis.
다들 공주의 이미가 주요를 미다마스 제바라 제단 주요를 안에가는 나도 자신으로 문제 제단 내가 있어야 당시 문제가 제가 내가 소소를 지금서 문제 제가 수준 레벨만 지고에도 내가 너무 지어를 때는 거야. 그래서 같이 내가 진이 말을 지고에도 다시 소 진이 전에 지가시 표시 지고인데 아니 계제과를 중주로 봤어. 근데 계제가 가리면 주대 제지보다 많이 봐만 주로 봤어라. 이 아니 토마토 이야기에서 그래. 계제과를 계제과를 그 칼로 맞춰도 같이 엔티도르 바바치도로 담가. 그 계제. 아니 딱 계를 하고 같이 다녀. 그래는 지단도 내가 지어야 되는데 그런 같이 지려. 엔터도 말아. 그래 obstacle 거리 같이 다녀줘야 되더라. 계제가 되게 강한 중간에 예스라. 되게 답변하는 것도 수술이 찍기 너차 시간 공부 많이 가서 가르치는 지 로고라. 봐. 잠깐만 지 수술에 지금 내가 있는 가르치 진행을 지우지 그래서 제가 그 자세로 오래. 같이 지내 진행 말을 이제 나와 막아와래. 차단이 우리 되기도. 봐. 되게 아니 어서 그냥 게임 먹어 줘야 돼. 이 모면 아니 이 미디어 세니만 특별한 간대지래라. 당한 소리 찍기 이 미디어 세니만 세상 때들이 세상 근데 기체에도 가르쳐주는 아주기 남들 나사지는 아주 칼라로 수술을 조건을 맞춰야 돼. 제로 있어야 돼. 또 맞아. 이 사회는 이 미디 같이 그래. 세상 딜러에게 제행을 사는 수술이다. 소위는 지가 싫어요. 봐. 이 나신 지나가 지금 대셔시랑 근데기 아니 수술을 나를 내는 근데 같이 기회도 수술이 가지고 지치고에는 수술만 내버려야 돼. 갈라올라는 때기 수술이 미치는 통을 잘 되는 얘라. 다 간다가 대셔시랑 오늘 같이 되는 거죠. 와. 이 수술을 아주 지치고에는 이 가르쳐는 수술이 전되는 제시마 이날에 무슨 되었습니다. 예스. 와. 이 빼대가 내시아서는 결혼을 이 대미 이 마대와지 세기를 답답하게 빼 가르쳐서 결혼 대신 시간 공부도 아주 지치고에는 결혼이 이제 되고 있는 거 말어. sembalu check mala di nashin kyangi kala roji du ju sawaina ra du sawaina kala di de du ye jeni so ina na mewa check des ra shedan de da no mala di de ya jeni ra da ka shedan da photo da ma je de jeni ro tene suzu ye mewa so des di nashin se de cha du jeni se sawaina in di so le ne ngai des.
So now we're looking at the next verse, which reads, finding its fuel in mental unhappiness, meeting with the unwanted and obstacles to what I want. Anger grows and destroys me. So generally, not just anger, but all the various kinds of afflictions that we're having, anger, attachment, ignorance, and whatnot. Once they're arising in our minds, we can't say that we feel happy, once we are in a state of anger or in a strong attachment. It's really not, we are not relaxed in these moments. And they actually, in fact, all these various kinds of afflictions, they create many obstacles for us, and not just in this life and in the next. And so that's why it's, we are very much encouraged to work on our minds and slowly eliminate all these various kinds of afflictions. Because they can be likened to poison. Once we eat poison, our life is in danger. And so likewise, as it were, once these afflictions arise in our minds, they will destroy our positive actions and so forth, and create so many obstacles and suffering for us. So therefore, we need to overcome these afflictions. So then we look at the next verse, verse 8, which reads, therefore I should totally destroy the fuel of this enemy, for this enemy has no other function than causing me harm in this way. So Geshema said that if someone generates anger in their mind stream, then naturally it will lead to physical, mental, or it will destroy physical, mental well-being or happiness. And it's considered to be the worst enemy, which creates all sorts of many difficulties for one. And you can imagine, now a person, an enemy like in human form, the worst our enemy can do is, harm us and kill us. That's the worst a person can do to us. But anger is considered to be much worse, because anger will, destroy so much of our, well-being and versus action and so forth. But it has very detrimental effects for this life, but also in the future lifetime. So in that sense, we should, try our best to eliminate anger by applying the respective methods. Yeah, so we easily point outwards. Yeah, we blame others, and we can say, yeah, this person is our enemy, and this person has done this wrong. But yeah, really, a person who utters harsh language towards us, who's angry towards us, of course they can harm us, and in a sense, they're our worst enemy in this life. But actually, anger is much worse because it affects not just this life, but future lifetimes as well. Yeah, so anger, that's in us. Yeah, it's the most, the worst enemy, which is in us, really, not the person outside.
Sometimes we get easy, but once inside.
Yeah, so when we are able to really subdue this enemy which is inside of us, then we are fine wherever we go. So then we look at the actual method to eliminate anger, and here the next point made is it is unsuitable to generate mental unhappiness. And the root verse number 9 reads, "Whatever befalls me, I will not disturb my mental joy. For having become unhappy, I shall not accomplish what I want, and my virtues will decline." So this is giving the advice that we should do, try our best to, keep a relaxed state of mind, despite of possible difficulties and problems we face in our lives. Because if we have a mind that is agitated and easily getting full of anger, then whatever we strive to do, whatever work we want to pursue, that will not turn out well. So we will not accomplish our aims, as it were. And then, as mentioned before, also when we give rise to anger, then the merit that we've accumulated over a lengthy period of time, the virtue, the positive deeds that we've done, they will either decline or get completely destroyed. And then verse number 10 reads, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So this is a verse that His Holiness, also the Dalai Lama, quotes again and again. And to think about it repeatedly really is of great benefit. Because it's clear what it's saying. When we face difficulties, if we have a problem, but there's a solution for it, so then there's no need to worry really about it, right? Because it can be solved. And likewise, if we have a problem and it can't be resolved or can't be solved, then there's no point of getting upset about it either, right? This is pretty easy and straightforward, right? Easy to understand. But to give an example, if you think of something really precious, something we hold really dear, and we lose it. So if it's short, we will not get it back again because it's lost or broken. Then there's not really any point of worrying about it or being upset or angry. Because it's sure we can't get it back anymore. But on the other hand, if there's a possibility to get it back again, then there's no point of worrying about it either, because we can get it again. And from the Buddhist point of view, we can also think about the fact that all things are impermanent. Every functional things, they change. And likewise, the same applies to our bodies. Our bodies will eventually, when we die, will separate. The body and mind will separate at death. So, according to Buddhism, everything, all impermanent, all functional things are impermanent. And so likewise, coming back to that example just mentioned earlier, if we were to do something, you can think, oh yeah, or if something gets broken, things are by nature impermanent, or we can think that I have in the past, I must have accumulated a certain karma for it to ripen in such and such a way. So that can make us feel then more relaxed about it. Or if we can think that if we lost something and say someone else might have found it, so we can think, oh, may that thing, may my thing that someone else found may be of benefit to them. So these are all some tools which will benefit us and make us feel more relaxed. Is it fairly clear, or do you need more explanation? Or if you have any doubts, you're also welcome to ask directly, to clarify. Okay?
Yeah, that didn't
So that we look at verse 11, which reads, "For myself and for my friends, I want no suffering, no disrespect, no harsh words and nothing unpleasant. But for my enemies, it's the opposite." So this refers to the fact that, not just for oneself, but with regard to oneself, if someone, is disrespectful, utters harsh language, or is in any way unpleasant to us, we don't like that for ourselves, but likewise, if we have, a teacher or a spiritual friend, we don't like someone else to, say, be disrespectful or utter harsh words towards them. Likewise, whether it's ourselves or our teacher, our parents, friends, we completely don't like, if something harsh is uttered towards them and people are disrespectful towards them and so forth. But as it says in the last line, with regard to our enemies, it's the opposite. So if then someone were to be disrespectful to our enemies, utter harsh language towards them and so forth, we rather like that.
Toagawa, so Zuba Chiva, Control Pagawa de Sunshine, Dala Niba Chiva, Toga, Susan Niba down the Labanema or Troy, Pagawache. Dagi Hila, Susan, another Ayua, and Dagi Hila, so the Dilla and Niba Chiva, Troy, the Laban is the Troy Pagawa. Ani Dagi is a Dala Leba Chiva, Toga. 하신 정상에서 미신바지 수수 잘해 야무치 내가 또 얼마나 가 타도 되면 온디야 가 레스 가봐 다 모델에 가서나 다른 이바체 바가 토가 비유리 레스바 두메체 바가 저바체 수수 두메 가려면 들 아니 저바체 레스 와 아니 얘의 수수는 해주시고 예주 소원이다. 뭐야 예주가 지금 받아와 있는 통주 제원의 가르는 예주 뭐죠? 근데 아니 예주서 주발라 저버죠. 그래서 뭐 와. 다 손들이다. 사실 그래서 다 두메지 발라서 저버차와라 숨스. 아니 두메 당도서 내비 주바. 모두 두메 수수 당도 내. 아니 저거 공부하지 봐. 아니 출래서 예발 집이 주바. 와, 출来번지비 주바다 아니 내지래 재미냐 비주바 숨셔도 저거 뭐하지 다 담보디라 가르다 동네 당들에 비주바 본다 피간에 지래 나와이나 동네 당들에 비주바 보면 나가 사제 나라서부터 류비 사제가 사제기 동네지 있어 라신에 있어 만대배 싸워 당아서도 동네 당에 어디 사제래 근데 용식이래 와 사제를 하고 사
Yeah.
되게 중국어를 따라서 지금 두개 가리는 영어에 있는 거라 가지고 바다 코를 내리 여자 두개 먹어지 그랬어요. 그다음 뭐래요? 이거 뭐죠? 아니 두개 공부 있어. 아니 그냥 두개들이 수수 상상하네. 그래 편도 있어요. 아니 고나서 때문에 근데 아니 가서 공부 있는 아니 파 그래 때야라 까는 거 찾아. 뭐가 제가 상황 맞아. 유모방아는 내버려서 비비 그냥 유모방아 빠야라 터지다네. 아니 무슨 저에 들려면도 있어요. 아니 동네 공부에 제벌시다. 동네 내가 수수 선생님 들 공부했나? 그냥 받는 거예요. 와. 다 뭐 사실은 뭐도
So basically through the outlines. Now we're looking at the part which deals with overcoming anger towards the unwanted, which has basically three parts. The first one is overcoming anger towards that which harms us. The second one is overcoming anger towards that which harms our friends. And then lastly, overcoming anger towards that which benefits our enemies. So if someone were to be kind and helpful to those who we don't like, we might generate anger towards them. And then there's this subdivision of the first point into two parts, being patient with suffering and being patient with disrespect and so forth. Whereas the first point again is subdivided into 3 points, practicing the patience of accepting suffering, practicing the patience of being certain in the Dharma, and practicing the patience of not caring about harm. And then looking at the next section, practicing the patience of accepting suffering, and it has 5 points. Geshema named them all. Thinking that one is not beyond the nature of contaminated suffering, thinking that, while we are, that this has to do with the fact that, because we are in samsara, it's the nature of things, samsara is by nature suffering in nature. And then the second point is thinking about the benefits of habituating ourselves with suffering. Then thinking that it's not difficult if we are habituated, and benefits of striving to abandon the afflictions, and lastly the extensive explanation of the benefits of suffering, of habituating ourselves with suffering, or familiarizing ourselves with suffering, that we are in samsara and that it's the nature of being in samsara, suffering while we are in samsara.
다들 딜레 다 무슨 두년 당들에 그래서 봐. 두년 당들에 두년 슬래니 안데서 저거 가지고 공부하나 두년 미만 이주미에서 세상 또 인중에 되게 친구 주고 봐. 인중 요에는 아니 나도 지금 거를 저도 줘야 있는데 아니 지금 가도이는 인중 요에는 이제 호차고 상담만 줘. 완전 난 취지에 되게 많아. 수소가 강의도 다 이제 진행한 거지. 건조를 지금 써왔다고 금시를 사람들이 건조 챙는데 건조로부터 내와줘서 이바지 차고 와. 지금 동해매만 동해매만 연주제기. 동해 전도 지난 동해하고 말했지. 이내 전도 동해 이편도 오래요. 봐. 동해 가르스에서 무슨 동해 지역에는 안 지권조를 써왔다고 옛날에 구셔지에 옛날에 뭐지 메디카드 양초로 차려. 봐. 소소를 강의로 제 건조 챙 건조라는 것도 내가 지금 남들 나이 코인을 줘야죠. 나마도 남이가 미미래 되게 멋있어 줘라. 봐. 또 강의 좀다 건조 챙이네. 봐. 되게 어떤 애가 좀 내가 답해야 답해라고 다 지키지요. 가서 나 어떻게 강의 지금 글을 놓치는 써주려고 이번 기록 사제용마다 써내긴 글을 놓치는 내가 남들이 가서 지 뭐라고 땅을 지금 사제 양보가도 시에당도 그랬어. 봐. 내 사제 배 고수도 고차다 양서들 하고 시기로 살아오는 직선. 대신에 글을 놓치는 써드려요. 기호 이유가 또 주제고 말아. 주제. 강의실에서 다고 시가시네. 다고 그러지. 가서 지금 나와서 주는 동안 내서 우리 지금 와. 근데 이제 전자 동네들이 동네들 당들 내와 있는 되게 동네들이 가르쳐는 요는 소소의 연주죠. 와. 연주자와는 주제에 대한 이야기를 되게 필요해요. 와.
So then looking at the verse 12, the last two lines which was referring to, there is no renunciation without suffering. Therefore, just that line. There is no renunciation without suffering. So this is saying that, of course, there's nothing good about suffering as such, but nevertheless, there are some benefits that come about with it. When we learn to accept suffering, because if there's some suffering or difficulties we go through, then we have a chance to develop renunciation. So that's, it's a very kind of like a benefit that comes about due to suffering. We'll have, more and more sense of renunciation, and therefore seek, protection, or we go for refuge, or, engage in the Dharma practice. We might pay homage to the rituals, and, we be rather humble, and, because all these we will not look necessarily for Dharma or engage in the Dharma practice when we are happy all the time. We will probably not have a sense of renunciation, but due to suffering, we might develop that sense, and then get engaged in the Dharma practice, and might turn to be a better person at the end of the day. And there in Tibet, the custom often was also to pray to Guru Rinpoche for protection or removing obstacles when people went on somewhere to another place. So in order to remove obstacles, they would pray to Guru Rinpoche.
강의를 드리는 시에서 출가면 이슈 가시 님을 하래 거기다가 출가리네 수수 강의를 드리는 수수 건조된 사람들서 지혜를.
So Geshema was asking you, whichever religious background you have, whether Hindu, Christian, whatnot, would you, when you face difficulties, then make special supplication prayers to a deity or a god, or?
세상 밀정만 지나니 제가 집어와. 근데 저도 나도 직강의를 어떻게 안 시니 거기를 이렇게 어디들 미디어 그러면 미디어는 일단은 나도 연주제의 계획 개화체라 구만당 어려요. 어디 다니고 쳐보라. 나도 일단은 저는 여러 그냥 연주비에 이와이나 한수를 이와를 해도 되겠어. 세상 남자 동해지 나도 동해지 때 도제를 치고 막 동해 정도 해도
Yeah, so suffering is not necessarily 100% bad, right? because due to suffering or difficulties, we, as mentioned before, we have some sense of renunciation, and it will encourage us to practice and be more virtual and engage in more positive actions. Then again, so there is no renunciation without suffering, and therefore mind should stand firm. And then further, verse 13, if some ascetics and the people of Kanapa endure the pain of cuts and burns for no reason, then for the sake of liberation, why have I no courage? So this is referred to other religious traditions of some ascetics, who engage in ascetic practices where they hurt themselves by cutting or burning themselves and so forth. And of course, in a sense, one could say enduring these types of problems or pains or sufferings is really there's no point to that. But ordinary hardships and difficulties and problems that we're facing in our lives, when we familiarize ourselves in accepting these types of suffering, and rather think, to engage in the practice of Dharma, then that becomes a very meaningful reason, to accept these types of suffering for the sake of the Dharma and becoming a better person and so forth. So we're now listening to the Dharma, and it's also important, to take care of our, bodies, and be comfortable. If you feel cold or if you have some pain, we can, cover ourselves or, sit comfortably on a cushion or a higher cushion, whatnot. So that's important to, listen to the Dharma, but also being comfortable at the same time.
No, not too much.
背的，他的公开背的，我们理解是背住个当，俺你看了随便语，就是这个工作语气，我们随便都讲，我们说俺的是出来给俺的都写出来，这也是标的，就从这个，他当初的来看的呢，我呢，点他话是主吧，我说公办人点别人我写的是吧？看来呢，我们看呀，就为每的看呀有没。特别是那个穷红白，那个全部让日本人去是吧？这看得老了，他们说的这，可能呢是日本方面呢，就那个日本去那个我们这边这个那边的搞了，红头去全部是让自己来的什么日本公土的也是，其实这个公司来的呢，我不看得起呢，像公司呢，俺的公司起码下来是有嘛的，是吧？功能看呀，你就功能的他下来就看也有嘛的了，就是，没得看也有没，特别是那个穷红白，那个穷就是红白红的起来呢，俺呢是那个穷不干净穷不的那边，这个还是这个红头的也是，这个别想吧。
Okay, so then looking at the next outline, the next points. So here it's about thinking that that's not difficult if habituated. And there's an extensive explanation with these subdivisions. First, it becomes easier with habituation, and then establishing that with an example, the object of patience, and last, an example for the strength of patience when habituated. Anyway, so then Geshema was reading verse 14, which reads, there's nothing whatsoever that does not become easier through familiarization. So through habituation, by habituating with small harms, I should learn to be patient with greater harm. This is just to say, when we, we can, generally speaking, we can, establish new habits. Say, for example, someone has a difficulty in getting up early, but they try and try and get up like an hour earlier, slowly, and then eventually they will be able to do that, and then eventually it will be easier for them. And so here, this is just saying that when we have a problem, face some difficulties, some minor problem, and we learn to be patient with that and not get angry and upset when we have a small problem. So gradually, we create that habit of reacting, calmly, staying calm, and not reacting out with anger, but being patient. And so we will gradually be able to also face or be patient in more difficult situations.
이내 메서드를 선호하고 따는 거 그런 거 그랬어.
So if you imagine a very, when it's a very angry person who has difficulties even getting along with their family members and friends, and let alone their people in their own village or town or country or whatnot, that if that person then gradually starts trying to be more friendly and be patient with their very dear friends with one person, and then gradually extending that. They will gradually create that habit and be able to change. And I mean, initially, of course, we might find all sorts of things which don't, accord with our way of thinking. We might find so many things that that don't agree with us, and in the beginning it's difficult to be patient with everything, but we can start with something small and then gradually extend that. And also, like mentioned yesterday, when we have this sense of satisfaction, that's very good to have, because if we have that an attitude that always wants more, greedy attitude, and this is not enough, and this is not good enough, and this and that, it will never be okay. So therefore, a sense of satisfaction or contentment with what we have is really very good to have.
Yeah, she told us. Pardon. She told us. She asked us to give us 3 questions or something to discuss for the after lunch discussion hour. Okay, so I mean, you can relate it all to your own experience, right? But one suggestion would be, how we practice, how we go about our practice of patience, what are the methods, and then in which situations, is it really sitting, by yourself alone on a cushion? Is that when you practice patience, or what are the situations when the practice of patience comes in? And then lastly, thirdly, then what are the benefits of practicing patience, and and what are the benefits in this life and next life?